Hello guys, welcome back, another episode of Jumana novel. So subscribe the channel and like, share, let go in our novel. The wise man opened the door to his house, needing to pinch himself a few times to make sure he wasn't dreaming. The beautiful girl standing before him seemed too good to be true. He wasn't good at flirting, but he tried anyway and said, "You must be the daughter of a fine cow. Otherwise, how could you be so white like milk?" She was about to punish him for his foolishness, but her need for his help made her ignore his words. "Please, help me." He puffed out his chest and flexed his non-existent muscles, saying, "Is someone trying to harm you? Are you looking for a brave knight like me, unafraid of anything, to protect you?" "No, I'm looking for the village sage." "Aren't you the sage?" "A sage in the morning, and by evening, a knight protecting beautiful women." "There's someone in critical condition. I've come to ask you to treat him." When he realized there was a patient needing help, he asked seriously, "What's wrong with him?" "He's unconscious and has lost a lot of blood after being struck by an arrow in his thigh." Upon hearing about a weapon, he asked suspiciously, "Is he an outlaw?" She could have lied to lure him into helping, but she was afraid he'd discover the truth and refused to help. "He's one of the Gatham tribe." The sage recoiled in disgust upon hearing this. "Your friend is an outlaw, and I cannot help him." "But he's human, just like you." He interrupted her. "No, he's a corrupt person who must die for humanity's sake." "Please, I thought you wanted me to protect you from some danger, but you've come with this ridiculous request. Leave, girl, leave before I get angry and you find no one to protect you from me." He slammed the door in her face, but he had barely turned around to re-enter his house when she reappeared, blocking his path. As soon as he saw her materialize from thin air, he shrank back and let out a high-pitched scream, like a girl seeing a cockroach crawl over her foot. At another time, Jumana might have laughed at the reaction of this skinny man whose messy hair made him resemble a dirty broomstick, but she didn't. Instead, she played her final card and said, "Have you ever heard of the treasures of the emperors?" Shock rendered him motionless, and he nodded in silence. "What if I gave you a piece of it?" "Are you an emperor?" She didn't have time to beat around the bush. Time was running out. She said, "Yes." Then, offering her deal, she added, "I'll give you a gold piece from our treasures. Not just any piece, a piece stamped with the seal of the kingdom of Solomon, if you agree to help him. And if I say no, I won't harm you. I'll leave and search for another sage." Here's the translated text. "No one will agree to help your friend, fairy. Please, then you agree." He fell silent, thinking for a moment, then said, "There's a book I want." "A book?" "It's rumored that the emperor's family has secret books and manuscripts in their vaults." "Which book in particular do you want?" "The Resurrection of Sheba." "And will this be the price for coming with me?" "The gold coin and the book, those will be the price." "Agreed." The sage went to prepare the tools he estimated he would need for the treatment. He gathered them into a large cloth bundle. When he returned, he asked her, "I'm ready. How will we go?" She extended her hand to him. "Take my hand, and we'll travel. How about I hug you instead? It might make the travel faster and more pleasant." "Hasn't anyone told you before that you have a sharp tongue?" "Oh, they have, but I won't tell you what I used to reply to them, and I don't want to know. Take my hand and stay quiet." He took her hand and closed his eyes. When he opened them moments later, he found himself in the same place and said, "You changed your mind and now want me to hug you, don't you? I need to confess something to you." I know. You've fallen for me." "You're right. I'm a man no woman can resist." She angrily replied, "Sage, why can't you be quiet and listen?" She made her position clear. "The gold coin and the book are with me right now. Stealing them from the family vault will take some time. Promise me, and I'll wait. It's well known that emperors don't break their promises." "Fine, I promise." She said this and then transported him. Moments later, they appeared in the safe, abandoned cave. The sage lost his balance and felt a sharp dizziness due to the incredible speed of their travel. He chose a corner in the cave to vomit. Ayub whispered to her, "You're late." "Sorry." All the sages refused to help. "And how did this one agree?" "With a bribe." "Are you sure he's a sage? He doesn't look the part." The sage turned toward him, wiping his mouth with his sleeve after finishing. "I heard you," he added, standing up. "Overlook my appearance, won't you? You're human, though your massive frame makes you look like a gorilla." The sage's first treatment step was to ensure Bar was breathing properly. He observed the rise and fall of his chest and found his breathing very weak. Opening Bar's mouth to check something, he concluded, "His tongue is blocking the airway." He inserted his finger into Bar's mouth and adjusted the position of his tongue. Afterward, he observed his chest movements again and, with visible relief, said, "He's breathing well now." Without further ado, the sage stripped Bar of all his clothes. Overcome with embarrassment, Jumana turned her face away and shouted, "Why did you do that? This young man was in battle. I need to examine the wounds on his body." Though Bar was thin, stripping him revealed a body of taut, stone-like muscles. The sage turned him over from side to side, inspecting the number of wounds. "No new wounds. except for the one on his thigh. He announced the next step. I'll close the wound. He pulled a piece of metal from the cloth bundle he had brought and said, I need fire to heat this. Jumana stepped forward. I'll handle that. The sage warned her. I need heat equivalent to that of fire, nothing less. She held the metal with one hand and used her special power to heat it. Smoke began rising from the piece as she continued. The sage said, That's enough. It'll melt in your hand. He removed the arrowhead from Bar's thigh, then used the heated metal to cauterize the wound, sealing it. He wrapped the area with clean cloth. Shortly afterward, the bleeding stopped completely. The wise man could have left the cave, but his dedication as a healer compelled him to stay for a while longer to ensure that his patient had safely passed the critical stage. After approximately 3 hours, he returned to check the wound. He found a wide grayish spot gradually surfacing on the skin, which left him uneasy. He decided to stay a few more hours to monitor it. Ayub asked him shortly after, will he remain unconscious for much longer? The wise man, distracted and concerned by the grayish spot, replied, no, he should regain consciousness at any moment. Night fell, and the cold became biting. Ayub went outside the cave to gather dry branches from some nearby trees. He returned and lit a fire to warm them. The three of them sat around the fire in silence, weighed down by exhaustion, worry, and concern for Bar's health. Perhaps it was this very concern that kept them quiet, with no desire to speak. Yet, the wise man had urgent news to share, and without preamble, he declared, his leg must be amputated. The tension in the air intensified. Ayub protested, I won't allow it. I understand your refusal. The wise man replied, but know that I do not wish to amputate your friend's leg to hang it as a trophy on my wall. He continued, the arrow severed the vein that supplies blood to his leg. What nonsense is this? Speak clearly, for God's sake. The wise man, exasperated, shouted, his leg is dead and needs to be amputated. Do you understand now, or should I explain it in guerrilla language? Jumana wept. She cried because the talk of amputation brought back old memories, and what pained her most was the certainty that she was the cause of all that was happening now. While she cried, a fourth voice spoke in the cave. It's okay. They all turned towards the source of the voice, astonished. The new voice was Bar's. He had awakened from his unconscious state. Though exhausted and pale, he smiled, a smile meant to dispel the sadness and guilt entrenched in Jumana's heart. Wipe your tears, he said gently. It's okay. I still have another leg. She smiled at his words and wiped her tears. Bar then turned to Ayub, his smile widening. He was relieved to see his friend unharmed, knowing no harm had befallen him during the battle. Still smiling, he asked, how did we survive? I took care of it. I dealt with the rest of them myself, Ayub replied. Bar was unsurprised by the response. Before losing consciousness, he remembered having killed many in his fight against the Gatham and knew that Ayub, with his exceptional skill, intelligence, and a bit of luck, could have handled the rest. When Ayub finished answering, he noticed Jumana staring at him, perplexed by his lie. He discreetly gestured at her with his eyes as if to say, I'll explain the reason for the lie later. Jumana instinctively understood that Ayub didn't want Bar to learn the truth, that she was a Jinni. Though she didn't understand why, she trusted her instincts and stayed silent. A few moments later, Bar, noticing the wise man's presence, asked, who's the goat? Had it been anyone else, the wise man might have unleashed a sharp retort. However, Bar's sharp, commanding features and intimidating presence prompted the wise man to swallow the joke and reply politely, this goat is the one who helped save your life. Bar, with a tone of gratitude, said, thank you. Continue your work, wise one, and do whatever you deem necessary. Ayub intervened with a dissatisfied tone. How can you not care about this matter? As if that foot isn't even yours. He added, you're a fighter, Bayer, and losing your foot will make you an easy target for your enemies in the future. Bayer turned to the healer and asked, is there any chance my foot will heal? The healer replied, I've already told you, the arrow pierced. I didn't ask about that. Is there a chance my foot will heal, yes or no? No. With a tone of wisdom and composure, Bayer asked, will anything change if I grieve or care about it? The healer answered, hope, dear Bayer, can create miracles. And Bayer cut him off sharply. Are you mad? Answer me, yes or no. The healer let out a suppressed shout. No. Bayer turned to his friend Ayub and said, did you hear that? So why should I care? The healer began pulling out amputation tools from his cloth pouch, but Jumana stopped him. We've always heard about the immense knowledge of the healer of the Jasasa village and his great skill in treatment. If what is said about you is true and not exaggerated, find us a solution other than amputation. She added pleadingly, please. In truth, the healer had an idea from the beginning, but because it seemed impossible, he kept it to himself. However, seeing their insistence, he revealed it reluctantly. There is an idea, but it's a bit foolish. Everyone leaned in to listen as he prepared to explain. There's an old legend that says 7 drops of a phoenix's tears can heal any human ailment. He added a warning, but it's known that no man who ever went to obtain those tears has succeeded. Bear scoffed at the idea. It's foolish to risk one's life for a dead foot. The healer nodded. Exactly, which is why I called it a foolish idea. But Ayub interjected. If saving my friend is considered foolish, then I would gladly be a fool. Resolutely, he added. I'll get the tears. The healer, as if to absolve himself of responsibility, said. The Phoenix's land is a very dangerous place. Ayub, rising to his feet, replied. That's fine. Gorillas charge at bananas without considering the risks. Jumana joined in. And I'm coming with you. Bear was well liked, possessing a natural ability to win people's hearts. Everyone loved him, but he didn't love himself for a simple reason. He knew he was a bad person. This self-awareness made him reject their sacrifice. I appreciate your decision, but I choose amputation. The healer, accustomed to such operations in his profession, saw no reason for concern. At the same time, he was eager to collect the reward Jumana had promised, a gold coin and a book. He said briskly, I'll prepare a poppy plant concoction. This drink, Bear, will make you lose consciousness so you won't feel a thing. But Jumana stopped him again. Your job is to save your patient, not to help him harm himself. The healer might have seemed frivolous or unserious due to his sharp tongue and love of witty banter. He often appeared to tolerate insults and criticism with good humor. But when it came to his profession, he did not tolerate accusations of neglect or incompetence. His tone shifted to one of stern authority as he said, Let me explain this simply. He pointed at Bear. This man's foot is dead. If we don't cut it off, the death will spread to the rest of his body, reaching his heart. So when I say I'll amputate his foot, I'm saving him. Jumana stubbornly replied. And we want you to save all of him, including his foot. You're wasting time. The result will be the same. You won't succeed. Do you want me to sing it to you to make it clearer? She responded. As long as we're alive, it's too early to give up or declare defeat. A fine saying, but it belongs in books, not in real life. Then he added, Didn't you hear me earlier when I said all the men who went returned in failure? I heard you say men, not women. So, you're implying that women are better than men? I didn't say that, but that's what your words suggest. I'm responsible for what I say, not for what your mind interprets. He shouted, pulling at his hair. Your minds are like donkeys, but at least you're beautiful, and that excuses you. I'll cut out your tongue if you don't watch your words. Mockingly, he replied. Go ahead, cut it out. Then I'll drink the tears of the phoenix that you're planning to bring, and I'll be healed. You won't be healed, because phoenix tears cure human ailments, not those of mules. The argument might have gone on indefinitely, but the sword ended it abruptly. Bar suddenly pointed the blade at Jumana's neck and thundered, I have given my order, girl. From now on, anyone who defies it will face this sword. Ayub's hand reached out to the blade aimed at Jumana's neck. He addressed his friend. Calm down, Bar. She's only trying to help you. Bar didn't lower the sword and, in a bitter tone, said, Tell her I don't need anyone's pity, nor do I want her help. Jumana tried to explain herself. I don't pity you. I just want to help you as you helped me. Bar gave her the last words she expected to hear. I regret helping you. If I could go back in time, I would have let Gufran abduct you so I wouldn't have to endure this chatter. Then, pointing the sword toward the cave's exit, he commanded, Get out of my sight. I don't want to see you again. Leaning on his sword, he lay back down on the pile of straw, ignoring her. Defeated, she withdrew from the cave. He called out to the sage, Prepare me some poppy herb drink. About an hour later, the sage finished brewing the drink and presented it to Bar in a clay vessel. It's very hot and extremely bitter. Be careful as you drink it. Bar took the vessel from his hand and downed the drink in one gulp, disregarding the warnings. Then, mockingly, he said, Save those instructions for a chicken like yourself. The sage retorted, Your tongue is doomed, Sir Bar. Shall I cut it out for you as well? Bar shot him a sharp look that made the sage's blood run cold. Swallowing hard in fear, the sage mimicked a chicken. Cluck, cluck. Moments later, Bar began to feel heavy-headed, struggling to keep his eyes open. He grabbed the sage by his clothes and asked, When will I wake up? In about a day and a half. Good. That gives you enough time, Bar said, then added, Do you want to lose your head? No, because then I wouldn't be able to enjoy gazing at your beautiful face. If the drink wears off before you've finished your task, I promise you won't see my face ever again. Because you'll be angry with me and leave for another sage? No, because I'll rip your head off. As soon as he finished speaking, the potion took effect and his eyes closed. Once the sage was sure Bar had lost consciousness, he decided to reclaim his dignity with an outburst of suppressed words. A goat one moment, a chicken the next. Why does he always compare me to female animals? Who does this arrogant fool think he is? Ayub intervened. Forgive him, O sage. How do you tolerate a friend like that? He's harsh and ill-tempered. He's not like that. It's a defense mechanism. He hurts the feelings of those around him to ensure they don't pity him. He'd rather be hated than pitied. Suddenly, Jumana reappeared with determination. But his tricks won't work on us. The sage shrank back, letting out a fearful cry at the sight of her. When the terror finally subsided, he asked, What do you mean? The phoenix and get the tears for him. But he could wake up at any moment, the sage added, lying to deter her. The poppy herb drink I prepared was lightly brewed. And you're scared of him, aren't you? I'm scared. Of what? Of whom? Of him. Asterisk asterisk. No, of course not. I slapped him on the face just a while ago. I didn't want to humiliate him in front of you, so I waited until you left and taught him a lesson in manners and respect. But I didn't leave the cave. I was with you the whole time, she said. And you heard everything? She nodded her head and said mockingly, "Balk, balk." His lie now exposed, he expressed his distress. Oh no, he'll rip my head off when he regains consciousness and realizes I haven't completed my mission. Don't worry, we'll return to the cave before he wakes up. But I'm scared. Fear doesn't prevent failure. Fear prevents success. Then she sought his permission as the healer and the one responsible for the patient's health. Please agree. The wise man knew they would go with or without his consent, so to appear in control, he said, "Fine. I agree." Ayub explained their plan. "I will go with Bar to the Phoenix's land, while you, wise one, remain behind." The wise man hesitated, concerned. "I'm afraid that if you delay, the infection will spread from his foot to the rest of his body." But Ayub had already prepared a solution for this. "Our journey is expected to take a day. If we delay any longer, know that something unfortunate has happened to us, and we won't be returning. In that case, you have my permission to amputate his foot." Then he added a message for Bar. "There is a code word, Bar, and I agreed to use at parting. If I don't return, tell him I'm not apologizing. Friends don't need apologies." The wise man, visibly moved by their departure, said with a plea, "But you'll both be fine, and I'll see you again, won't I?" There's comfort in knowing someone cares for you, so Jumana felt happy to see his concern. "Are you truly worried about us, wise one?" she asked. "Of course. If something happens to you, who will pay me the agreed-upon price?" They resolved to go to the Phoenix's land, though they had no knowledge of how to get there. For this, Jumana decided to seek help from her family's castle. She entered her chamber, sat cross-legged on the floor, closed her eyes, and used her special telepathic power to summon someone. She did not stop until a voice reached her. "When I heard your call, I thought I was imagining things." Opening her eyes, she silently observed the person who had come. Jumana held mixed feelings toward her. She loved her mother yet hated her actions. Nonetheless, she had to call her for help. "I need a favor from you, Taj." Her mother knew her daughter wouldn't summon her after 3 years of estrangement unless it was serious. "What do you want?" "I want you to accompany me to the Phoenix's land. You know a lot of stories about that place, and your presence will be crucial." "You must be joking, right? Tell me this is a joke so I can laugh. Asterisk asterisk. Do you think I called you after all this time to make a joke? You've clearly lost your mind." "No, I haven't." "Then why would you say you want to go there?" "I need the Phoenix's tears to save someone. What I know is that the Phoenix's tears heal the sick, not the dead." "I'm not talking about Mytham." "Someone else?" Jumana should have prepared her mother for the news, but the urgency of the situation left no time. "His name is Bar, one of the leaders of the Gatham, and he saved me and Ayub from being kidnapped." When Taj saw a human in the castle of the emperors, shock silenced her. She needed a few moments to confirm she wasn't dreaming. Then, with regret, she struck her stomach. "Curse the heavens for the womb that bore you." She then approached Ayub and delivered a powerful punch. Ayub didn't move or defend himself, honoring his promise to Jumana not to provoke her mother. Jumana, in turn, had promised to protect him, and indeed, before the punch could land, Jumana stopped it with just her finger. The information was too difficult for Taj to comprehend, and it took her some time to understand its meanings. After a while, she said, almost to confirm a specific detail, "Did you say that they are working with the Jatham?" "Yes, I said that." Her eyes widened in astonishment. "How can you forget who this organization is?" She replied to reassure her mother that she hadn't forgotten. "It's the organization that tyrants used in the past to overthrow my father and seize his throne. I haven't forgotten this, my mother, and I won't forget it, for the Jatham is our #1 enemy." "And enemies, Jumana, have you forgotten how you should deal with them? We should kill enemies, not throw ourselves into a death trap for them." "But Bahar and Ayub turned against the organization for my sake. Didn't it occur to you that they might turn against you once they discover your truth? They are different. I'll give you 2 pieces of advice concerning humans. The first piece of advice is not to trust any of them, and the second is to never forget the first piece of advice." This was no time for stubbornness, so Jumana fell silent and didn't reply, while Taj asked, intrigued, "Do they know that you are a fairy?" "Ayub knows only." "And does he know that you are from the Emperor's family specifically?" "He didn't know, but I think he knows now." "What do you mean that he knows now?" She wasn't sure how her mother would react when she discovered the impending disaster, but she said, "Come out, Ayub." From inside one of the clothing cabinets in the room, Ayub emerged, his massive figure comparable to the size of the cabinet. The moment Taj saw that sight, a human's presence in the Emperor's castle, it left her speechless with shock, taking her a few minutes to verify that she was not in a ridiculous nightmare. She said, hitting her belly with regret and sadness, "Damn the heavens for this belly that carried you." Then she charged at Ayub and threw a powerful punch. Ayub didn't move, remaining still as he watched the punch approach, and Jumana reminded him not to provoke her mother with any defensive movement, as she had promised him she wouldn't let anyone harm him. Indeed, before the punch reached him, Jumana had stopped it. She halted it with just one finger. Taj realized the tremendous power her daughter had acquired. She had stopped her punch with just a single finger. Jumana said, "I promised him safety, and no fairy should ever do that." Taj replied defiantly, "We'll see," and then vanished from her spot. After her mother left, Jumana maintained a defensive stance. She knew her mother would attack again. She had gained much greater power than before, thanks to her father's training, and thus she was able to parry her mother's attack indefinitely. However, she feared that the sound of the fight would attract some family members to her room, exposing her truth, so she hastened to say what she had. "I have a deal." She waited for a moment without receiving a reply, prompting Ayub to say, "Maybe your mother left the room." "No, she just wants to make me believe that, so I'll let my guard down, and then she'll attack you." Then she added as she looked around, "I know you're here. Show yourself and listen to the deal." A voice came from the void. "Your deal is rejected before I even hear it. Don't be hasty. I bet you'll change your mind after hearing it." She spoke with high confidence, forcing Taj to say, "I am listening." "Agree, and I will forgive you for killing Mitham in return." Only then did Taj reveal herself and said, surprised, "I didn't think you would do this at all." In truth, she hadn't forgotten Mitham. That friend still resided in her heart, but she understood that hatred wouldn't bring him back to life, while forgiveness might save someone else. "Do you agree to the deal, and will you allow me to return to the castle?" "Yes. I'll tell my father that I need you, and he will let you return." "Agreed," she added. "Take the human and follow me." Taj led them toward the horse enclosure, a vast area within the confines of the dark forest where emperors kept their winged horses to graze and stretch their legs and wings in the wind. Taj called out, "Sabi." As soon as the intended horse heard its name, it neighed and flew toward her. It was a beautiful pure white-winged horse with thick, curly hair. "Why don't we go to the land of the Phoenix through teleportation?" Taj approached her horse, responding while stroking its mane. "The land of the Phoenix is considered a buffer zone." "A buffer zone?" "It's an area where fairies cannot use their powers. That's why it's called a buffer zone. To go there, we need to ride horses. Take your horse from the enclosure and choose a suitable horse for this human." "I will ride Sabi. He's a strong and magnificent horse." The horse Sabi neighed loudly and stomped the ground with its hooves as if expressing pride in those words. Jumana called her horse Ari, a massive winged creature of chestnut color, matching the color of her eyes, and she picked another horse for Ayub. The three horses soared toward the land of the Phoenix. They had a preliminary idea of the difficulties they might face, but none of them expected the real challenges waiting for them there. Humans have a limited capacity to withstand atmospheric pressure. The three horses instinctively understood this, so the horses carrying Jumana and Taj rose and fell as much as they deemed appropriate during the flight, while the horse carrying Ayub was careful not to rise more than 7,000 feet. After 5 hours of rapid flight, they reached the buffer zone, and Jumana and Taj sensed the fairy's power being isolated from them. The horses continued flying, and after an additional hour, the land of the Phoenix appeared on the horizon. Taj gave the command to land, and when they touched down, Jumana asked her, "Why did we land here? If we continue flying, we will enter the airspace of the land of the Phoenix, and the birds might attack us. Therefore, the horses will stay here while we continue sneaking on foot." Here is the English translation of the text you provided. Ayub pointed out a problem that Taj had not noticed. "Even if we continue sneaking on our feet, the birds may spot us. We are 3 moving targets." Taj just realized the issue, but she didn't want to acknowledge his observation and admit his cleverness. Jumana asked him, "And how do you suggest we act accordingly?" He was ready with a plan. "We will blend in with the environment around us," he added, explaining. "Each of us will carry branches full of green leaves, and will hide under them while moving. This is called camouflage in warfare." Taj laughed off his idea. "That's a foolish plan. The Phoenix will surely see us." "I know, but it will think we are trees." "But it's not foolish. It knows that trees don't move. Its sight will deceive it. We will appear stationary compared to its height, and in regard to its speed of movement in the air." Taj realized deep down that he was right in everything he said, but she still insisted and refused. Ayub, on the other hand, understood her reasons for refusal, so he said, to make her seem like the leader who commands and decides, "This plan will not succeed without a seasoned leader to lead it, so if you, Lady Taj, think it's suitable, then lead us to achieve it." Taj fell silent and seemed to be pondering. His plan was indeed solid. There was no other way. She finally ordered, "Let each of us carry branches full of green leaves." Under the branches laden with green leaves, the 3 of them sneaked towards the Phoenix's territory and managed to achieve a significant victory by advancing forward without being detected. There was about an hour until sunset, so Taj instructed them, We will enter the nesting area at night. They hid beneath a large tree and began to wait for nightfall. While they were doing so, Taj asked, "Does your friend really deserve all this risk from us?" Ayub did not feel comfortable answering that question, so he replied, "You are not risking your life for my friend, Lady Taj, but for the deal with your daughter. Your daughter is not risking her life for my friend either, but to repay him for risking his life to save her. I'm the only one risking for my friend." Ayub continued, leaning his back against the trunk of the tree. "Once, when I was 9 years old, my father asked me to accompany him to the market. He said he wanted me to help him carry some goods, so I went with him." Ayub could not remember anything about his previous life anymore. He had forgotten everything related to that era: his family members, their names and appearances, their home, and the name of the village they lived in. The only memory he had left was that of going, especially when they entered the slave market alley. There, in the slave market alley, Ayub, who was 7 years old, witnessed a very strange sight. He saw young men and women inside cages, naked as they were born, and heard customers asking merchants about their prices, and he saw with his own eyes some buying and selling transactions. His father led him until they reached a place with a sign that read Shabander Adnan. The father ordered his son as he was about to walk away, "Stay here." Ayub remained there observing his father as he withdrew with the merchant. He couldn't make out their conversation, but he could see the bald, chubby merchant resembling a bloated fish handing his father a black pouch that seemed to contain money. His father took the pouch, put it in his pocket, and walked away without looking at his son. Ayub thought his father had forgotten him, so he hurried to run after him, but the merchant's workers caught him before he could get far and carried him to the cage. The small child cried out, calling for his father. "Father, father!" At that moment, the merchant pinched him hard on the ear and said, "You are a slave, and a slave has no father or mother." At that moment, Ayub realized that his father had not forgotten him. He had sold him to that merchant. He did not hate him, for love and hate are matters of the heart, but he lost trust in him and decided never to forgive him. So when his father later came back to talk to him and said, "Look, I am your father," Ayub responded with the merchant's words, "I am a slave, and a slave has no father or mother." The caravan of Shabander Adnan moved to another market. The new market was larger and more crowded with customers than the earlier one. While the cages of slaves were on display for the public, a wealthy customer approached, showing signs of extreme wealth. The wealthy customer stopped at the Shabander's establishment, accompanied by a group of followers and companions, and began inspecting the slave cages until his gaze fell on one of them, saying, "Bring me that slave, Shabander." The Shabander complied with his request. "As you command, sir." The wealthy customer, while examining the slave, asked, "How old is he? And what is his name?" "His name is Ayub, and his father told me he is just about 9 years old. He seems taller than a 9-year-old, and his muscles are taut and strong. I want him." The wealthy customer paid an amount of money that was higher than the asking price. The Shabander was delighted and gave him a luxurious whip made of bullhide as a gift. Even though the young slave obeyed his master submissively and humbly, the master, while walking through the market, struck him on the back with the whip as a form of sport and amusement. It was a powerful blow that left a wound from which blood flowed, causing Ayub to cry out in pain. The master became furious when he saw his slave weeping and began hitting him again, shouting at him, "Shut up, you worthless one. A slave does not cry." Yet Ayub could not hold back his tears, and the blows continued to rain down on him more and more, while the people around laughed and encouraged him until he lost consciousness and fell to the ground. The master dragged him by the leg, like a sheep being taken for slaughter, and returned him to the Shabander's establishment, saying while throwing him down and throwing the whip on top of him, "Return my money." The Shabander tried to understand the reason. "Did he do something to offend you, sir? I wanted him to be a guard for me when he grows up, but once I hit him, he cried like a woman." Shabander Adnan felt sorry for that customer and returned the full amount of money to him, asking him to keep the whip, as it was a gift, and gifts are not to be returned. And then, to appease him, he turned to his workers and said, "Return the slave to his cage. We will castrate him when he awakens." The customer left happily, laughing, while his followers laughed behind him. Ayub woke up at night. He had not eaten or drunk for a while. His throat was dry and his stomach empty, and his back throbbed with wounds. He was bound to die for sure. He was desperate, hungry, and longing for his family, his village, and his mother. While his breaths were gradually waning, a hand reached through the bars of the cage, holding a cool water skin. "Drink." Ayub took the water skin and drank from it. He was recounting this story to Jumana and Taj under the tree. Even at that moment he could still remember how delicious the water tasted that night. As he finished drinking, that person who had given him the water skin unlocked the cage door and said to him, "Follow me." Ayub walked behind that mysterious person, who was about his age, followed him through the dirt paths, and they eventually stopped in front of the wall of a big house, where he said to him, Do as I do. And what will you do? I'm going to climb the wall. Not before you tell me where you are taking me. Do I look like a person who wants to harm you? No. Then follow me silently. That mysterious boy climbed the wall, and Ayub climbed behind him. Then they dropped inside the yard. Although the house had guards watching it, they sneaked in without attracting anyone's attention. Once they were inside, Ayub remembered something. My name is Ayub. And what is your name? Is this a time for introductions? Don't I have the right to know the name of the person I'm following? At least, my name is Kid. But that's not a name. What if we gather the people of the house, and I tell you and them my story from the beginning? Ayub almost said something, but that mysterious boy, who he claimed was a child, interrupted him, saying, I told you to follow me and stay quiet. Can't you learn to be silent? So Ayub closed his mouth with his hand and shook his head in agreement. Quietly like bats, they advanced, moving from room to look for something Ayub did not know, and they continued to move from room to another until the boy found what he was looking for, a large bed where a man and a woman were asleep. The room was dark, however, the moonlight filtering through the window helped them see. The child whispered, Look at that man. Do you recognize him? Ayub scrutinized the man lying in the bed and then said, Yes, but why did you bring me to him? Just wait a bit, and you will see. The child had been hiding a knife in his pocket, but in the next phase, he would need another weapon. He bent down, picked up a shoe from the ground, and carried it toward the bed. He first approached the woman. He gently woke her, and before she could grasp what was happening, he covered her mouth with his hand to prevent her from screaming. Then he struck her hard on the head with the shoe, causing her to lose consciousness. When he dealt with her, he turned to the man and poked him. The man woke up startled, and as he sat upright, he felt a small creature like a monkey clinging to his back, with a sharp knife pressed against his neck and a whispering voice threatening him. I will rip out your throat if you scream. The man realized that the one clinging to his back was a small boy, and he guessed from his voice that his age did not exceed 10 years. Yet the knife pointed at his neck made him treat the matter seriously. Did you come to seek money, boy? No. What do you want then? He pointed to the door and said, Look there at that boy standing at the door. The man needed more time to see in the dark. Yes, I see him. What's wrong? Do you remember him? Yes. He's the slave I struck today in the market. I insulted his dignity, and that's why we are here. I can compensate him with money until he is satisfied. How old are you? Rich customer. 60 years. Hasn't life taught you yet that there are things money cannot buy? When you grow up, boy, you will know that money buys everything. The child accepted the challenge, replying, You insulted him today in the market. Many watched as you struck him. Tell me what price you believe would restore his dignity. The rich customer fell silent and did not know how to respond, so the child declared, I will tell you, it's 19. Were you talking about gold dinars? Rather a whip strike, for that was the number of strikes you gave him in the market. Don't tell me you intend to take revenge on me. No, Ayub is the one who will take revenge on you. Stop this silly joke right now, boy, and take your friend and leave my home. I am not joking, but this is life, rich customer. And I will add, haven't you seen life yet? It's circular, meaning that everything you do to others continues to return to you repeatedly. Your voice betrays you as a child, yet you speak with the tongue of a man in his 70s. I have no family, rich customer. I am a product of the streets and alleys and a friend of the bad. And today it's your bad luck that I was present at the market and witnessed you hitting him. So I followed you until I discovered your home and then brought him to you to take back his rights. But he is a black slave, and I am his master. He is human, and you are human. But there's a difference. The child accepted the second challenge. Both of you were created from clay. Both were carried in your mother's womb for 9 months. Both can be hungry and thirsty. Both urinate and hold waste in their bellies. And in the end, both will return to the clay. So where's the difference you were talking about? The rich customer was dumbfounded and no longer knew how to respond. The child exclaimed, Ayub, come tie him up and gag him so he doesn't scream for help. Ayub approached him, but the rich customer tried to comfort him. Boy, I understand your feelings, and I understand your pain. Ayub cut him off. To truly understand pain is to experience it yourself. Then he tied him up using the bed sheets. Isn't an apology enough for you? I'll let you answer that question after I finish. He said that and then gagged him, and took the whip, the same whip he had been punished with at the market, and readied himself to strike him. But at that moment, the child stopped him as though to give him a moral lesson. It is said, Ayub, that forgiveness is the peak of virtue, and that a pure heart always drives its owner to forgive others. The rich customer joyfully absorbed what he heard, but that joy did not last long, for the child smirked cunningly and continued, But we are without morals, and our hearts are not clean. Then he ordered, Whip him, Ayub. When Ayub finished giving the 19th strike, blood flowed from the rich customer's back, and tears of pain streamed down his face. The child approached him and said, My friend and I are sorry for what we did to you. He added sarcastically while looking at his back, We are sorry, and yet your wound is still bleeding. It seems that apologies don't stop blood from flowing, nor do they heal wounds, O rich customer. Ayub felt strong as he ran away from that house. He felt protected and proud, and he was able to laugh heartily without caring about the fact that he had become homeless and far from his family and village. They realized that the rich customer was going to send his men after them, so they moved far away from the borders of his home, and when exhaustion captured them, they lay on a patch of land covered with green grass and looked up at the sky. They spent hours recalling the details of the adventure they had just embarked on and laughing heartily as if they had discovered the secret of life early, which was, there is nothing worth crying over in this world. Ayub turned to the question that had occupied his mind from the beginning. Why is your name Kid? When I was small, people called me Kid, and I grew up, and the name stuck with me until now. And your family, where are they? They all left. Where to? He fell silent and did not answer. Ayub understood that he did not want to talk about the matter, so he diverted the topic. What do you think we find you another name? He said. In fact, the boy had adapted to the name Kid, but he liked the suggestion. What do you suggest? How about Rayhana? Beautiful, but it suits a girl more. Ayub smiled fondly and proudly said, it's my mother's name. What does it mean to have a mother? It means you feel warm all the time. That night, Ayub thought of many names for him. Some were either funny or scary, some were too serious, others unsuitable for human use, and some were beautiful, but the boy did not find them convincing. They continued doing that until both fell into the trap of sleep. While Ayub was sleeping, he had a strange dream. He was standing with Kid in the same place. Suddenly, someone visited them in the dream. The visitor was his mother Rayhana, carrying in her hands pure white milk, extending it toward Kid and saying, I have given my son this. Drink. Kid approached her, drank the milk, and when he finished, he hugged her and she said to him, you have become my son, and Bar is your name, and fire will be your destiny, and from your lineage, my son, great descendants will arise. Ayub asked her in the dream, and what about me, mother, and what will my destiny be? She turned to her son and smiled at him tenderly, saying, your destiny is to protect your lineage, and henceforth your sister will come after you. She finally told them before slowly disappearing. From this moment, you are both Helena. Then the dream ended. Ayub woke up and turned toward his friend. He wanted to wake him and tell him about the dream he had seen. He found him awake with remnants of fresh milk around his mouth. He asked him in alarm, what's that around your mouth? It's milk. Your mother offered it to me from her hands in a dream. She said I had become her son, and Bar is my name. She said something I didn't understand. Ayub, fire is your destiny, and from your lineage, great descendants will come forth. How do you know she said that? I was with you in the same dream and saw everything. Bar and Ayub had one dream, and this was something neither could interpret. Since that night, they became one family, brothers, and the earth was their home and the sky their roof, with one mother named Rayhana. As Ayub finished recounting the tale of his meeting with Bar, the sun was about to set, and the night began to drape its black cloak. Ayub said to Taj, who had been listening to his story, you asked me, Ms. Taj, whether my friend deserves all this risk or not, and I think you have come to know the answer. I am totally prepared to risk my whole life not just to save his leg from amputation, but to save his toenail from breaking if the matter requires that. Taj never thought a day would come when she would admire someone from the human race, but she now admitted to herself that she was impressed by the character of that young man named Bar, and she acknowledged within herself that his qualities resembled those of her husband, Gabra the Emperor. She said, rising, prepare yourselves. We will enter the nesting area of the Phoenix. Within the safe abandoned cave, and while the wise man stood beside one of the cave's outer walls readying to relieve himself, he suddenly felt the edge of a sword pressing against his neck and a whispering voice threatening him. I told you I would take your head if the effect of the drink wore off and you hadn't completed your task. Couldn't you have waited a little until I finished my business? Where are you and that girl? Where did they go? I will tell you, but don't kill me now. I will not kill you if you tell the truth. Good, for I do not want history to record that the wise man died squeezed. Speak. They went to fetch you the tears of the Phoenix. Although Bar stood on one leg, he was still able to lift the wise man by his hand and scream at him. Why didn't you stop them? Listen, you frighten me, and there are things I will spill out of me. He lowered Bar, and began to pace back and forth, using his sword as a cane. Bar estimated while looking at the wise man how much exhaustion he was suffering from. He was suffering from a high fever, and despite the cold weather, he was sweating profusely. Death was lurking in his leg and threatening to expand its territory and spread to the rest of his body. Yet despite all this, he didn't care about himself at all but was afraid for the safety of Ayub and Jumana. The wise man wondered to himself. He had given him a strong anesthetic, which was supposed to leave him unconscious for 2 days. So how did he regain consciousness so quickly? The truth was the wise man was right to question his situation. The poppy plant drink he had given was indeed strong, but what he hadn't accounted for was Bar's addiction to intoxicating drinks and the powder of some narcotic plants, which lessened the effectiveness of the poppy drink on him. Calm down. Everything will be all right. And how do you know that everything will be all right? I don't know, but that's what they say in such situations. Didn't Ayub tell you something? He said he does not owe you an apology. Friends don't need to apologize. Bar realized that Ayub had only said that because he had resolved himself for a suicide mission, either to return victorious or never come back, and for that reason, he had to act to save him and Jumana from their recklessness. He took his sword and stretched his hand toward the end of the handle, unscrewing it as it had been specially designed to open and close, then extracted a small wrapped yellow paper. He opened it and read from it a spell consisting of 13 words plus 5 scattered letters. As soon as he finished reading the spell, the paper burned in his hand and turned to ash that blew away with the wind. He gazed toward the horizon with his sharp eyes and remained in that condition for some time as though he was waiting for someone's arrival.